and welcome PTA members. My name is Cullen Bolin and I am a member of the board at this educational institute and would like to welcome you to our panel discussion regarding dress code. First, I'd like to take some time to introduce our panelists. We have Alexa McAndrew. She is a legal consultant specializing in controversies with the school's regulations. We have Daniel Bearden, who is the principal and has been working with students for over 15 years. And we have Emily Burns, who is a student counselor in the community and started her career at a local middle school. So the purpose of our panel is to further educate you on the implications of dress codes among students. And to do this, I'm going to be asking the panelists each, either individually or collectively, a question. Each panelist will be given time to answer the questions and to try to convey their opinion as thoroughly as possible. So now if I would like to ask the audience to please silence any cellular devices and hold all questions until the Q&A session right after the panel. The first question is going to be directed towards all three panelists, and we're going to begin with Alexa. So your question is, how do you feel about dress codes within an educational system?
Well, as Colin said, my name is Alexa McAndrew and I'm a legal consultant specializing in school regulations. I feel that the dress codes in the educational system discipline women unfairly compared to their male counterparts. Documented studies have shown that female students are being sent home and having their school days interrupted by showing shoulders, collarbones, or even wearing leggings. So with recent studies, dress codes are actually inconclusive when it comes to actually proving correlations between academic and what women wear.
Thank you, Alexa. Okay. Daniel, your question, how do you feel about dress codes within an educational system?
Hello everybody. Again, my name is Daniel Bearden and I am the principal of the school. So basically I am for dress codes. Your children are all in this school for basically one reason: to prepare themselves to be professionals in their later work environments. Every workplace has some sort of business dress standards that they adhere to. Our high school should be teaching that to our children. Like it or not, how you present yourself does impact how people perceive and treat you. According to the website schooluniforms.org, a district in LA who established uniforms marked a decrease in fighting of 50%, 65% for weapon possessions, and 74% for sex offenses. We are not calling for a full issue of uniforms at this PTA meeting, but it does demonstrate how much what you wear impacts how others treat you.
Thank you, Daniel. And Emily, the question, how do you feel about dress codes within an educational system?
As Colin said, I'm Emily Burns, and I'm against dress codes that would target women and put a male student's discomfort above a female student's education. According to the Huffington Post, dress codes often combine a belief in male lack of control with shame and fear of female bodies. These rules encourage men to do whatever they want, while girls are forced to hide any part of their body the school administrators deem inappropriate. They teach women that their bodies are inherently dirty and shameful. They feed directly into rape culture and make it so that the onus of responsibility for male attention at school is directly on women's closets. And that's plainly absurd.
Thank you, Emily. Our next question will also be directed towards all three panelists, beginning with Alexa, and that is, what is being implied when a student's choice of outfit is considered a distraction?
When a student's choice of outfit is considered a distraction, we as a society are trying to impose our perspectives of what we think is societal norms. In a case of Woodward High School, a student stated that girls are being, shamed, feeling self-conscious, and feeling uncomfortable with their bodies. And basically, we are feeding into this idea that girls, we're stereotyping how women should see their bodies as. And the Atlantic Post emphasized that we're not trying to create a dress code that keeps girls from wearing bikinis or anything. We're just trying to keep it so if girls come to school with showing their shoulders or collarbones, that those body parts aren't being sexualized. And schools are trying to justify that being strict with girls' dress code is a way of effectively creating a distraction-free learning zone for the male counterpart.
Thank you, Alexa. Okay, Daniel, what is being implied when a student's choice of outfit is considered a distraction?
I don't really think anything's being applied. I mean, outfits, depending on what you're wearing, are distracting. It could be the guy sitting next to you who's wearing the opposite gang colors of yours are on, or it could be the girl you like wearing a miniskirt. You gotta remember, these are not grown adult men and women we're talking about. These are 14 through 17-year-old children. We are teaching them how to keep their hands and their eyes to themselves, but they are children and they are easily distracted. With dress code standards, they are able to stay focused on learning and not staring at each other. According to the book, The Mind of Boys, boys are responsible for 90% of discipline problems and make up 80% of high school dropouts. Establishing these dress codes are not a war on women. They're merely one less hurdle that our boys and girls have to overcome in order to graduate successfully from high school.
Thank you, Daniel. And Emily, the question is, what is being implied when a student's choice of outfit is considered a distraction?
Well, a lot of things are being implied by this, and none of them are good. First and foremost, it tells women that how they dress makes them subsequently at fault for what happens to them. According to Safe Place, a local women's shelter, this attitude shifts blame from the offender to the victim. Women have the right to dress and act how they want and where they want. No one deserves to be assaulted for any reason. But aside from that, it implies that men are nothing but dumb animals, incapable of looking at a clavicle or a knee without being able to stop themselves from thinking about it or acting on it. We should have more faith in our young men than that. It also discounts the fact that men are raped. And lastly, it implies that the LGBT community doesn't exist or doesn't matter. By creating these unequal gender norms, it completely negates students who are men who could get distracted by looking at other men, or students who were assigned a specific gender but prefer to dress like the other. None of these things are things we should be teaching young people in high school.
Thank you, Emily. And now we're going to get to the individual questions, beginning with Alexa. Your question is, are men and women being equally punished for not complying to dress code?
I do not believe women are being equally punished when it comes to breaking dress code. For example, tank tops. Men will wear tank tops, women will wear tank tops, but in a lot of cases, boys will show up and they were either not addressed about the situation or teachers will ask them, please don't wear that the next time. But when it comes to girls, the Building Gazette actually did a study on how girls are experiencing shaming and public humiliation. When they violate dress code, they will be given a large t-shirt that is sometimes brightly colored that says, I violated dress code, or this is a dress code reinforcement. And really it's shaming girls and humiliating them in front of their peers, which, I mean, going through high school, that's the last thing you want is attention drawn to yourself. So while boys are being left to be boys, girls are being called out in class or being sent home and being told to change their clothes. So the outfit of the girl isn't the most distracting part. It's more so the professor, the teacher that is interrupting class saying, you need to go change. And overall, they're focusing more on reprimanding girls for dress codes rather than focusing on that class. And for that reason, I stand against the unequal discipline in dress codes.
Thank you, Alexa. Daniel, your individual question is, should dress code regulations be gender specific? Why or why not?
If you look at the Austin High School's dress code, you'll see that it does not specifically say male or female on it. Regardless of this, in practice, sometimes differences have to be accounted for. For instance, boys' underwear versus girls' underwear. Boys do not wear bras, and bras, regardless of your opinion on it, are still a sexualized part of our culture. Vice versa, girls are not as looked at as much for wearing baggy clothes that they could be hiding weapons underneath as much as boys are. Focusing on particular habits is not sexist, it's merely practical. Many don't agree with the previous mentioned sexualizing, but children are not the conduits to push cultural change. If you want to change the stigma of bras and revealing clothes, that needs to come after high school, after middle school or high school. We do that here in college, not there. So once again, I am for dress codes.
Thank you, Daniel. And Emily, your individual question is, should schools be responsible for educating students about consent?
to RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, 44% of all rape victims are under 18 years old. And girls aged 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general public to be victims of rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault. This is high school age girls we're talking about. We can't rely on parents to teach about consent because obviously that isn't working. People like to think of rapists as strangers in dark alleys, but also according to RAIN, 4 out of 5 assaults are committed by someone the victim knows. These are your children's classmates. We should be teaching young people in school about what consent means instead of teaching them that dressing incorrectly could lead to an assault. That's why I'm against dress codes that perpetrate these outdated gender norms.
Thank you, Emily. So thank you PTA members for your attention and for listening to our topic. Just to recap, Alexa was against dress codes or against punishments that are unequal when dress code violations occur. Daniel made it clear that he is pro-dress code because it aids in the students' future professional developments. And Emily took her stance against dress codes that harmfully target women. So thank you panelists for your insight. We appreciate you taking your time to come and educate us on the implications of dress codes. And now I'd like to open the floor to questions. Yes.
Do you think there should be federal guidelines on dress codes?
Okay, so should there be federal guidelines on dress codes? Daniel, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Absolutely not. America's a big nation. There's West Coast culture, East Coast culture, and then there is the Bible Belt. We do not want one of those cultures pressing their opinions on what dress code should be onto the rest of the nation. So I believe that should be up to states, up to districts, all the way down to up to individual schools.
How would you go about teaching men to not do what they're doing? 'Cause that's
Okay, so how would you educate men on these, on what's going on? Emily, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I think very simply, we need to be teaching young men that no means no. I think a lot of them believe that, oh, women just play like that and they act like they don't want it, but they do. We need to teach young men that no actually means no, that you're never entitled to another person's body in any occasion, ever. That no matter what someone is wearing or if they've been consuming alcohol, that doesn't matter. The more we repeat these things to children, the neuroplasticity in your brains works, and the more you repeat it, the more children start to believe it. And that's why they do need to be taught it in schools as young as possible, so that when they get to the age where these are problems that they'll be facing every day, they'll know, okay, that's not an acceptable action to take.
Thank you, Emily. Any other questions?
Where should school draw the line in dress code?
Okay, when should schools draw the line in dress codes, Alexa?
So as you know, dress codes are important to the general, student population, but I think the line is drawn when you think, a shoulder or collarbone is something that becomes a sexual aspect on a girl, and I think that we can't hold girls to a different disciplinary standard when it comes to things like that. Everyone should be held to the same standard, and it should just be about education, like Emily said.
Any other questions?
I was wondering if you could elaborate on that
On-
question. So what can be taught in order to decrease the movement rates? Like, is there anything else? A little more specific.
Can I answer
Emily,
that?
yeah.
How would you teach that in schools? Because that would end up becoming a controversial issue like sex talks in schools. I think that is something that should be discussed or mentioned.
Okay, so Emily, how and what should be taught to keep this from happening?
Yeah, we've talked about this before individually, that teaching consent in schools could be very controversial because of those reasons, that teaching sex ed in schools is hugely controversial. A lot of parents don't think that their kids should be taught about contraception or how condoms work. But frankly, they should be taught. And I know I'm going off topic here, but when you're teaching young people about sex and sex ed, that's, I think, when you should get into the consent portion of it. these things are what happens only if both parties agree. And I actually read an article the other day that was saying, the 5 steps to teach your child about consent. Number 1 was saying that, teaching your children to ask, is it okay if I hug you? Is it okay if I shake your hand? And I know those seem really basic, but those sort of concepts can translate when children get older.
Does that answer everyone's questions? Any other questions? So that wraps up our panel. Thank you all for attending. That's it.